welcome listeners to episode 14 of the Running Guy podcast, where I aim to provide informative content and interviews with elite athletes from around the world. Like in today's episode, where I'm extremely excited to be chatting to a guy that I've been following with interest for over 10 years now, as he races amongst the world's elite in both road and mountain trail racing, whilst continually building his social media presence on YouTube to share his knowledge and coaching skills with the general running community around the world. He's certainly led by example with his business and personal motto, any surface, any distance. His career has been lengthy and successful, with the road ahead disappearing into the horizon. Welcome to the Running Guy podcast, Sage Canaday.
Oh, thanks for having me on. It's an honor. Excited to be here.
Yeah, fantastic. No, great talking to you. Now, before we get into chatting about your running journey thus far, Sage, mate, I want to suggest a recovery modality that I've been using my whole life that I believe is the best hands down on the market for performance enhancement and load management. It's not banned by WADA and is freely available worldwide. Do you know what it is, mate?
I have no idea.
Sleep.
Oh, now, that's a big one.
Why am I talking about this, mate? Because I thought I'd bring this up because you've been replying to my emails between 11:30 and midnight, your time. Yeah?
So, oh, yeah, you've been tracking me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I thought, why isn't that guy in bed, mate? So, unless Pacer, your canine companion, has some sort of a unique secretary skills, I guess you're one of those late-to-bed athletes. Is that right?
That's true, yeah. I've always been a bit of a night owl. Even my parents are like that. My siblings are like that. And, you know, I have the luxury, being a professional athlete and owning my own business, that I actually don't have to wake up very early in the morning. So I will say I go to bed late, I stay up late, but I could also sleep in late pretty much every day. So I don't actually like running in the morning. So I usually get a good solid 8 or 9 hours of sleep every night. Even though I wake up much later than most of the population probably. It's a luxury to be able to sleep in.
Yeah. I mean, they label that pro hours, you know what I mean? When they see someone out running at 9 or 10 o'clock, they say, oh, he's running pro hours, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I imagine that, mate. I know you're a big health advocate, and I assume that's what you're actually doing. I'm the opposite, mate. I'm sort of early to bed, early to rise. I generally end up running, say, pro hours myself because I work early as a PT and a running coach, so I'm sort of up before the sparrow even farts. And then generally head out running around 9 or 10 o'clock, which is good. But we're actually starting to heat up here now in summer. We're hitting some mid 35s next week here in Canberra, so that's about 105 on Fahrenheit. So so it's starting to warm up finally. We didn't get much spring. We tend to go straight from winter to summer this year. It was a little bit strange, the weather at the moment. Whereas you guys...
I could relate to that.
Yeah, no, it seems to be...
Because, it is kind of seasonal, so we do have some pretty warm days in the summer here in Boulder, Colorado, where I'm based, but so in the summer, if I'm out camping with my girlfriend in the mountains, we'll wake up a lot earlier, sometimes at sunrise, and do a big mountain run or something like that. You want to avoid the thunderstorms and avoid the heat of the day, whereas in the winter now, transitioning where it's, we've had some below freezing temperature days and nights, and it'll be snowy and icy. If I wait till later in the morning, a lot of times the bike paths and the roads and the trails get all packed down or they get plowed, so you don't have to worry about slipping and falling on ice later in the morning. It's also the sun comes out usually, so it's at the crack of dawn it's harder because you're more likely to slip and fall and have trouble in the snow in the wintertime, and it's really cold.
Yeah, I've seen you over the years. I've been a big follower of the VO2 Max Productions here on YouTube, so I've been watching yourself as a person and your career grow, which has been fantastic. And I remember a couple of times you were trialing, whacking some pins and nails in the bottom of the shoes. That was probably before people were providing you shoes, but just try to get a little bit more traction. So, and I was thinking, I don't often see you on a treadmill that much, so you obviously go searching or go looking for somewhere to run rather than, do a Inga Brixton training on the treadmills as they have to do in Northern Europe. So is that right?
Yeah, well, I just didn't have a gym membership for a long time, so didn't really have access to a treadmill or a weight room. But then we do have one now at one of the local gyms, and so I will use it occasionally. I get really bored on the treadmill is the main thing. I'll have to listen to music. I don't think I've been on the treadmill much longer than 1 hour at a time. So I've never done like a really long run on a treadmill. I've definitely used it for some hill workouts because I think it could be a good tool to use. And then on the really bitter cold days where it snows like a foot and it's like -10 degrees out in Boulder, I'll do some of my running on a treadmill, but it's really just a couple times a year. Usually that happens. So I prefer to train outside. I think it's usually a better stimulus and it's not as boring. But the treadmill has its place. I've used it a couple times over the years.
Yeah, yeah. You ever sort of worry about like a slip or something? Obviously, it's pretty risky running on the black ice and the slippery stuff. Do you ever have to worry about that?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So if it was like really icy out and I had to do a speed workout, also don't have access to an indoor track, so the treadmill could be pretty good. It's the problem with a lot of the treadmills though at the gym is the maximum speed is 12 miles an hour.
Sure. Yeah.
So what is that like? I don't know what kilometers per hour that is. 18? No,
Yeah.
20.
Yeah, it'd be about
Not quite that fast.
18,
Yeah, 18, 19.
Yep.
So it's good for marathon pace and slower, but if you're trying to do like 400-meter repeats at a 5K pace, it's actually not fast enough. Plus, it's a little easier because of the push-off force and the lack of air resistance. But I kind of negate that, or I try to level it out by putting up the incline to add more resistance. So you start putting it on 2% incline. And then the treadmill, it also generally gets really hot and uncomfortable, especially if you don't have a fan. So you're kind of fighting the heat training too, which does make it harder. So it could be a good workout. But I went to college in the Northeast in upstate New York, the state of New York in the U.S., and it was way colder there than it's been in Boulder. And then right after university, I lived and trained in Michigan. I was sponsored by Brooks to run on the roads, and I did 3 winters in Michigan, just north of Detroit, Michigan, and though it definitely got colder there, and we were running on ice, and some people would fall and hurt themselves, and you'd be tiptoeing around, worried about a career-ending injury. So yeah, it's definitely a balance, and it's tricky.
Yeah, for sure. I might go to. You've just recently returned from Nepal, where you qualified to race the final of the Golden Trail Series. So that's been going for 2 years now. So you did it last year and this year. So I think it was the top 10 that qualified to race the final in Nepal. Is that right? You had to be in the top 10 to get to the final, or?
Yeah, and that's the big incentive really with the Golden Trail Series. They just did it. They launched it 2 years ago. I've done it the last 2 years. I've been lucky enough to be in the top 10 the last 2 years. And so what it is this, it's a series of races, iconic mountain races, all 42K or less. And they've kind of changed it up over the last 2 years, but they score your best 3 races. So you could compete in all 6 if you want, but if they take your best 3 results, and it's all by what place you got in the race. So if you get first place, if you're like Kilian Jornet, and you win a race, you get 100 points. And then if you get second, you get like 88 points. And then it goes down from there. So the better you place, the more points you get. And so after 3 races, after the Ring of Steel in Scotland, it was the last race before the final, they tally up the points. And then if you're ranked in the top 10, the big incentive is they pay for you and your significant other or friend or family member to travel with you to the final race. This year it was in Nepal. Last year it was in South Africa. And they also pay for, your airfare, your food, your hotel, for the 2 of you, and then they also give you a 5,000 euro bonus just for being in the top 10. So it's pretty lucrative with the travel benefits and being invited to travel to these races and having the series cover that cost, as well as give you open prize money on top of that. If you're in the top 5 of each race, you get 1,000 euros, and it's been really cool. And you run against the best guys in the world, like Kilian Jornet. He's won it. He won it this year. He won every single race he did, including the final in Nepal. So he's the guy to beat. He's kind of a legend. So it's good. And there's one race is in the U.S., the Pikes Peak Marathon, which was my best race this year. But the other races are mainly mountain races in Europe, in Chamonix, Zagama, races like that.
Yeah, and I was looking at some footage of that race over there in Nepal, and Yeah, it looked absolutely brutal. Really solid, sharp technical climbs, on the way up, on the way down, pretty high altitude, probably higher than normal racing altitude. I was told the landscape's so harsh over there that even the mountain goats avoid that area, mate. So yeah, it looked pretty hard, and we'll go to your race that you did over there in Pikes Peak. Probably a favourite of yours, more in your backyard, and you've done it numerous times, and you finished second there behind Killian. I think that photo that photographer took, and you would know it, you and Killian, that nice handshake at the finish line. That was just a brilliant photo. Um,
Oh yeah, Peter Maskimo took it.
yeah,
He
no,
works for the American Trail Running Association, so
yeah,
he's a local.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a good moment.
It's a cracker. No, that was a great race, that one. Um, yeah, so that sort of moved you a little bit up in the series with that result, because I know you weren't necessarily happy. Was was Mont Blanc part of that series, or was that
It was,
yeah,
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 yeah. So the struggle I had earlier in the summer was the race has already started. They actually start, the first race is Zagama, which is in Basque Country, northern Spain in the mountains, and that's usually in May. But I was doing Comrades this year, the Comrades Ultramarathon in South Africa, where I saw you, and I really wanted to do Comrades because it was an uphill year, and so I was doing a lot of road training, and I finished Comrades not very well, but it really beat me up. But then I'd already signed up for the next race, the Mont Blanc Marathon. It was 3 weeks later, or maybe it was 2 weeks. It was really close to Comrades. It was a bad idea. But I was like, I need to start doing the Golden Trail series. I need to do mountain running in the summer. So, and I love going to Chamonix, France, where the Mont Blanc Marathon race is. So I had a really tough go around there. My legs were tired from Comrades, I think, and I wasn't mountain trained. And I placed so poorly at Mont Blanc, I didn't score a single point. If you're top 30 in the races, you score at least 1 point. I think I was like 35th place or something at Mont Blanc, so I didn't get any points. So it didn't really even count towards the series. So then I was desperate, and I was like, I need to recover, I need to train better, and I need to focus on the last 3 races of the series. But I thought I didn't have a chance at that point because I'd already blown my first shot.
sure, sure. Now we'll talk about Comrades. That was the first time you'd done Comrades, wasn't it?
No, I did it. I did Comrades in 2015,
Okay.
the up year, and I did much better my first time at Comrades. I was 15th place, 13th place if you take out the guys that tested positive for PEDs in the top 10.
Okay.
So I ran I think it was like a 6:0. It was close to 6 hours flat on
Yep.
the up run that year. Of course, it was a little longer that year too. I think
Yep.
the finish line changed because of the construction, but yeah, Comrades has always been a really challenging race for me. I feel like I haven't figured it out yet, but yeah, this year is my second time doing Comrades, and I'd only do an up run really, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's down for the next 2 years, so you probably got it marked down to head back and try to get it right.
I would like to try one day to go back to Comrades on an up run and improve my time and place, and just
Sure.
kind of finish strong. It goes well the first half, and then after about 50K, and then things got really tough. Definitely, really, this year was harder even than the first time.
Yeah. And do you think that was like a fitness thing and not having the right conditioning for that style of race, or was it something else going on, or any ideas?
Yeah, no, it was definitely a fitness thing. I don't know. I thought I was more prepared, but I should have known because in both years, in 2015, I actually had run the Boston Marathon 6 weeks before Comrades, and I got 16th place at the Boston Marathon that year in 2015. I ran 2:19:12 on a kind of a bad weather day at Boston. So then I was pretty fit going into Comrades that year. The only issue that year in 2015 was that Boston was only about 6 weeks before Comrades, so I don't think I quite recovered, and I wasn't able to extend my marathon endurance for the ultramarathon distance. I was well trained for the hills though, so I had that fitness. Whereas this year I was training for a road marathon, and I had run the Rotterdam Marathon And it was a good, I think it was about 12 weeks before Comrades. So I thought I had ample time to recover and prepare, but my problem was I only ran 2:23 at Rotterdam, so it was actually one of my slower marathons, and I didn't seem to be having the fitness that I had or the speed that I had in 2015. And I think part of it was my running form was a little off. I got a little too quad dominant, and I wasn't activating my glutes and hamstrings as much as I have in the past. So kind of sloppy form, not enough power in my stride, and it led to some inefficiencies that made me kind of run slower, even though I tried to run a faster pace at Comrades. So, I went for it. I went for it both years at Comrades. I went out pretty hard, so I paid the price.
Sure. Probably a good little segue there, because when you say you're quite dominant, you're any surface, any distance, but the challenge that comes with that is running up mountains and running trails, and then having to switch to run on roads. Like you said, you have to build that speed and that specific of running on the road back again so quickly, and once again you're switching focus from the mountain trail racing back to the roads, where you're going to attempt to qualify again for the US Olympic Marathon team. You just recently announced you're going to have a shot over there at Houston, which is only 9 weeks away, January 19. So again, you got to make that transition, and I guess you've done it a few times now, having to make that transition. But what's the next 9 weeks sort of involve to allow that to happen? I mean, you made the Olympic, I guess you'd call it the Olympic Marathon training squad team in 2007 and 2011. So you've been there twice before. I know you just missed out last Olympics. I think the qualifying time was 2:19 there, wasn't it, like it is this time? And you just missed out by 20 or 30 seconds. So you're so close. So it's fantastic that you keep trying to go from one to another. But what's the next 9 weeks? What are you going to have to do to get down to that 2:19 pace again?
Oh, a lot of speed. So just to clarify, it's a little weird how we do it in the U.S. We actually have the Olympic trials selection race. So if you run under 2:19, you qualify for this Olympic trials race, and then actually at the Olympic trials race, if you're top 3, you make the U.S. Olympic team, which I'm kind of too slow to do. I've kind of known that for years. Like, I'm not going to get top 3 at the Olympic trials. I just want to be in the selection race because it's a really special race. It only happens once every 4 years. You get to line up with all the best American marathon runners all in one race. It's on TV. It's got great coverage. There's only, in 2012, my last Olympic trials, it was actually at Houston. There were only about 90 guys in the race, whereas I think this year maybe 200 guys have qualified in the U.S. with a sub 2:19. I'm not sure exactly on the numbers. And then my first one in 2007, the standard used to be 2:22, but there were still only about 100, 150 guys in the race. So it's a really special race. I love to do it. I've always been missing by a couple seconds. So in 2016, I missed by 12 seconds. In this go around for the 2020 trials, I've missed by 50 seconds so far, because I tried 2 years ago at the Houston Marathon. I ran 2:19.50, so I was 50 seconds short. Going to try one last time at Houston again. It's the last day you could run the 2:19, sub 2:19 to qualify. So, it's all the marbles are on the line there, but it's a good challenge because it's a really flat course. And coming from the mountains, I got to do that transition again, and I never know if I have enough time to make that transition to actually run another 2:18 marathon. So it's a good challenge. I work on my speed a lot. It's a little harder because of the timing. We're going into winter here in Colorado, so it's the tracks get covered in snow. It's hard to find access to a track. Like you said earlier, I sometimes have to do a treadmill workout. But I've been working on my speed. Like tomorrow, I got a session. 10 by a kilometer, where I run at lactate threshold pace, or about half marathon to 10K type of effort for these kilometer repeats. I've been doing shorter kilometer repeats. I've even been doing 300 meter repeats, 400 meter repeats to try to get that stride going fast again. getting the stride rate up, but also getting the power back in the stride on flat tarmac surfaces on the track, on the road, getting used to the pounding of the pavement on the road surfaces, and trading in my trail shoes for the Hoka road shoes, and working on that speed, mainly with shorter reps. But I'm still doing traditional marathon training, long runs. I did a 35K long run last week, pretty steady. I'm running over 100 miles this week, 160K a week. So a lot of it's easy pace, but then there's a lot of these workouts all faster than marathon goal pace, which is 3:17, 3:18 per kilometer pace.
Yeah, sure. So if you sort of structure down over the next 9 weeks, are you sort of introducing more of that really short, sharp speed work towards the end of it, or are the 9 weeks fairly similar as far as volume and the sort of sessions you're actually doing, or do you sort of break it down more specifically than that?
I'm gonna change things maybe as I go along, but I have a general plan. Like I'm definitely not gonna neglect some long runs, and I'm definitely gonna have a few long runs be really hard, where I actually hit close to marathon pace during the second half of a 40K long run or a 35K long run. The speed, generally I've been starting with shorter, like I said, the 300 meter repeats, the 400 meter repeats, and the kilometer repeats. And over the next 9 weeks, I'm going to start extending them a bit. So I'll probably cut out the 400 meter repeats and still keep maybe the 1,000 meter repeats as my shortest effort, but then increase the lactate threshold, the tempo run type of efforts, to being like 3K repeats or 5K repeats even, where I'm running faster than marathon pace for longer periods of time. So the length of the intervals and the length of the repetitions will increase in distance, but then the last 2 weeks at taper time, I'll cut back on that kind of volume. But the general idea is, this week I'm doing 10 by a kilometer. Eventually, maybe I'll be doing 6 by 2 kilometers in 2 or 3 weeks' time, or I'll be doing 3 times 5K, and I'll kind of peak with my bread and butter workout of 2 times 8K about 3 weeks before the race. I like to always do a session of 2 by 5 miles or 2 times 8K. I call it 40 lap pride because I do it on a track usually. Okay. 2 times 20 laps basically with a 5-minute rest. And if I could hit that about 6 seconds, 10 seconds per kilometer faster than marathon goal pace, then I know I'm getting in pretty good shape off of a high mileage week. So it's a matter of extension, but for me, being an ultra runner and running high mileage for so many years, it's really more about getting the speed and intensity back more than anything, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And you pretty much answered my next question. I was going to ask, a lot of runners that will have a certain session or a certain run or a certain stretch of road that they go at and they do, and that's always an indicator that whether they're on or not. And yeah, you just mentioned there your bread and butter session that you go down the track, and that is a pretty good indicator of how you're going. So yeah, it has been over the years, and it's kind of dangerous to say like one session is the real key, because it's always a mixture of sessions, and you could just have a bad day. But I know last time I was in the same training phase basically for the Houston Marathon. This was 2 years ago, and I did the 2 by 8K session, and I ran 25, 50 and 25:40 for the 2 by 8K. I did 8K and 25:50, took a 5-minute rest, then another 8K and about 25:40, which was a little faster than marathon pace, but it wasn't quite as fast as it probably should have been. And then I ended up running 2:19:50, so I was too slow for my goal. So I know if I could hit that session and maybe run like 25:30 for 8K 2 times in a row, that would probably put me in a lot better of a position. But it's hard to say because it's a mixture of your other workouts. The other sessions I put a lot of stock into for marathon training is how well I could do some of my long runs. So I'll do a session where I run maybe a 38K long run, and it starts off pretty steady, not at marathon pace, but
not super easy. But then in the middle of the long run, in the second half of the long run, I'll try to do 3K or 5K segments where I'm running at marathon pace. And this will be at altitude in Boulder, Colorado. We're at about 1,700 meters, so it's a little harder to breathe. It's harder to run marathon pace a little bit. And if I can't hit marathon pace for those short segments during the course of a long run, that's usually a bad sign. And that's kind of been an indicator as well. If I'm struggling to hit the marathon pace just for little 2K or 3K segments, then it's probably not a pace I could quite hold for the whole 42K, even at sea level.
Yeah, okay. And I imagine at Houston, it's there's going to be everyone there. I mean, huge pack of runners trying to run that 2:19. So if there was, you got a pretty good idea of where you got to go through splits and where you want to go through halfway. And if there's a group of guys that are running 30 seconds quicker, do you just let them go and try to run at that pace just to get that 2:19, or would you think, well, maybe I'll go with them and be confident that you'll be able to hold that to the end?
Well, I'm actually not going to be confident that there's going to be a big pack, because last time there's a lot of guys usually through 13 miles through the first half, but then usually what happens is the pack splinters, and then you're kind of by yourself actually, because a lot of times at a race like Houston or even Boston, there's some super elite guys, a lot of Kenyans and Ethiopians, maybe some top Americans that could run 210, 212, and they're gone. They're off the line at 255 a kilometer, 3 flat a kilometer pace. And so then you're kind of stuck in no man's land, kind of in a gap. And there'll definitely be some guys with the same goal that I have, but it's usually maybe only a handful of guys. And a lot of times they'll go out on pace and we'll kind of work together. But yeah, after 21K, after 30K, usually the pack falls apart. And so last time I was at Houston, I got 9th place overall in the race, but I was running all by myself the last 10K. And it was kind of a problem because that day there was a little bit of a headwind, not a strong headwind, but there's a little bit of a headwind in that last 10K, and you really start to feel it if you're by yourself. So ideally there's a pack to run with. Ideally there's not a headwind. So you never know with the weather, but sometimes you have to make calls during the race if I'm going to go with a guy or not. I usually could trust my own pacing pretty well. I monitor my pace, just how I feel, what the splits say. I usually try to run a pretty even pace. At Houston, the first half definitely runs faster than the second half. There's a couple overpass hills in the second half, and then there's more likely to be a headwind in the last 5K. So the first half, it's better to go out a little bit faster, but not crazy fast. So the pace would be 109.30 at the half for an even pace for a 219 flat, but you have to run under 219. So I like to have a little cushion. So I'll probably try to go out in 109 flat at the half, and then hope I could run a second half under 110 to get me that sub 219. But if there's guys there with me, that would be great. You could help kind of draft behind each other and pull each other along, but sometimes you can't depend on other guys because they start running uneven paces.
Yeah. I just assumed you said before there's possibly 200 that'll run that 2:19, and I think I've read or maybe you even said on this pod that it's the last of the OTQ races to qualify. So I just assumed there'd be 40 or 50 runners turning up at Houston to run that 2:19, but that's obviously not the case. A lot of them have already qualified at other races. Would that be right?
Yeah, I'd say most of the people that have qualified already did it at other races. So,
Okay.
Like ideally, you wouldn't pick Houston to do it because it's 4 weeks before the trials. So even if I qualify, I'll be pretty beat up going into the actual trials race. I think there could be, depending on the weather, there could be a few of us that qualify at Houston, but I don't think there'd probably be more than 5 guys, if any, Americans that'll qualify. And even when I got 16th place at Boston in 2015, I ran half the race by myself. There was a point at Boston where I was maybe 10K into the race. No, it was about 20K into the race, and there wasn't another runner for a minute ahead of me, and then I look back over my shoulder and there's not another runner for a minute behind me, and so you're just it's actually, yeah, it's lonely out there. You're kind of in no man's land when you're running a 2:18 pace or a 2:19 pace, because you got the real lead packs ahead of you running under 2:10 or 2:12, and then you've got a bunch of guys who run over 2:20 behind you, but in between sometimes it's there's not very many people actually.
Sure. And Boston, that's where you set your PR, wasn't it? 2:16 something?
No, I ran my PR of 2:16:52 at the 2011. It was the San Diego Rock and Roll San Diego Marathon.
Okay.
Was when I ran my personal best. But I do consider my 2:19:12 at Boston to be kind of on par with that, because it was a really tough weather day at Boston. There was a headwind. It was freezing cold. It was kind of wet and rainy. And because I ran by myself, it was definitely a hard effort. But just getting 16th place at Boston was probably on par performance. I'm proud of that performance just as much as the faster time, just because it was Boston.
Definitely. Yep. No, and you should be proud. That's a great performance. Mate, if we can go back to your freshman days at college, you said you were at Cornell University there. You studied a Bachelor of Science, is that correct?
It is, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Yep.
was.
Yep.
I moved around a lot, but it ended up being a Bachelor of Science. Yeah.
Yep. Now, were you at Cornell for the studies, or were you there to compete on the track and field team, or which one came first?
I'd say the studies first, but then later on it was there for the running.
Sure.
So it's a bit of both. In the U.S. University system, coming out of high school before university, I was recruited a bit. I wasn't a superstar in high school. I wasn't the state champion. I was actually the same year as Galen Rupp, and we were in the same league. Galen Rupp being the top-ranked marathon runner in the country now.
Yep.
So I was pretty far behind. I wasn't heavily recruited by Cornell or very many schools, but I knew the assistant coach had actually co-founded the website letsrun.com, and so I found out about his coaching philosophy and Cornell coaching through letsrun.com. It's kind of funny, and I said, oh, I like his philosophy. I was on the website when I was in high school, still on the website, and it was a high mileage program, good studies. My brother went to another Ivy League school. He was on the East Coast as well. I have an older brother. So I thought I could be closer to him. And I really wanted to be a mechanical aerospace engineer. And Cornell University has a really good engineering program. So originally I went to study engineering at Cornell. That's the college section I got accepted into. And I wanted to also run NCAA Division I, which is the highest, I guess it's the most competitive division in U.S. collegiate running, basically. There's a lot of really good Division II and Division III schools and athletes too, but Division I is where you get usually the most competition and the most runners that'll go professional after university. So I had every opportunity to succeed academically and athletically at Cornell. I love the campus. It's out in Ithaca, New York, which is a very small town. It's kind of a small country town out in upstate New York, about 4 hours away from New York City. So beautiful trails and waterfalls and lush forests, like really green, but also very cold in the winter. And we did a lot of trail running there, and so I fell in love with trail running. Running around with my track teammates, we'd run on trails through the woods a lot. So yeah, I was there, but then I changed my major out of engineering to nutrition, and then I changed it from nutrition to human development, and then I ended up in design. So then I tell people I majored in running in college because I got more serious with the running, probably more so than my academic studies, to tell you the truth.
Sure. And why did you lose your mojo for the engineering? What happened there?
I wasn't as good at math as I thought I was. The mathematics were very challenging. My freshman year, I thought I was studying hard, and the exams and the tests, my test scores were not very good. especially in engineering, calculus, and physics. And I was kind of homesick. I grew up on the West Coast in the U.S. in the state of Oregon, so it's pretty much as far away from my parents and where I grew up across the U.S. that you could go, from the West Coast to the East Coast. So I was homesick. I actually was running really poorly that year. I gained about 8 kilograms of fat my freshman year. I was eating a lot of junk food, a lot of ice cream and waffles and pizza. And I wasn't sleeping well. I wasn't studying well. I felt like I wasn't good enough at the math mainly to keep going with engineering. So once I changed my majors, it got a lot easier.
Okay. Now you described the landscape around Cornell. It sounded like it would have been good for cross country as well. Did they have a pretty solid cross country team as well as the track and field, or?
Yeah. So actually cross country was a kind of more of my sport than track and field. And
Okay.
if you're a long distance runner, if you're recruited to be a 1500 meter runner or 5K runner or 10K runner, it's pretty much accepted that you're going to run cross country in the fall for the team, which is usually 8 kilometer races, and then you run 10 kilometer at regionals and 10 kilometer at nationals. Cross country, a lot of the courses are on golf courses. They're not too hilly or rough. And then in the winter, we actually had a really big indoor track season where we would run for 3 months from December, January, February, when it's cold and snowy outside. In the Northeast, we would go around and run a lot on 200-meter indoor tracks. And the longest event you could run there was the 5K. And then you would go straight into outdoor track season where you could run 5K, 10K at the longest on outdoor 400-meter tracks. So we were considered 3-season athletes as distance runners. We would do fall cross-country, indoor track, and then outdoor track. And then in the summer, we'd be training, building base for cross-country again. So cross-country was probably my best where I could be more competitive. I liked being off on the hills and on uneven dirt and more trail running than the track. The track did not treat me as well.
Sure. And I didn't look it up recently, but I remember the 5K track time was somewhere around mid 14s. Is that right?
Yeah, I ran 14:29 as my 5K PR. That was actually on an indoor track when I ran that time. I only ran 14:31 outdoor track, but I was probably better at the 10K. My 10K was 29:47.
Okay. Yep.
So I was definitely more competitive at the longer distance, the 10K, and then it was that year that I also qualified for the marathon trials. I ran a 2:21 marathon when I was at university too. So that was I was already doing road marathons, 42K, when I was in university. But then for 10K cross country was good too. But it's harder to compare times because the courses are hilly.
Now I know you've been pretty lucky. Not having any injuries, so you're doing a really good job there. Nothing that's sort of made you put your feet up for too long. Have you do you do much work in the actual gym for that, or do you feel that's just the conditioning you actually get from running the mountains and the different terrain?
I do as I've gotten older. I'm 34 now, but over the last out of college, we had access to a gym. We were lifting a little, but it's mainly just stuff you could do at home. Like I was doing some core work for the stomach muscles, the abs, just 5-10 minutes every day almost. Some push-ups, pull-ups. I have little hand weights. So I won't go and do anything serious in the gym for very long. It's mainly just making sure I stretch, but then I also build injury resistance by doing a lot of those sit-ups, the core work, the push-ups. I did just recently invest in a hex bar deadlift. So we have that in our little apartment, and I've been using that a lot. But otherwise, it's mainly just little hand weights for the arms and upper body, nothing too elaborate, and then a lot of push-ups and sit-ups. And if I have some imbalances, I'll do maybe some bridge exercises to activate my glutes, as well as using bands at home, some resistant bands for specific movements. And then I still do some running form drills, the high knees, the butt kicks, the lunges, trying to stretch out the hip flexors. But I've been pretty lucky. I think some of it's kind of genetic, some of it's your running form, some of it's your ability to sleep, like you said, being able to get a solid amount of sleep every night. Some of it's tied up with diet, and then it's also tied up with your training, how you monitor your training so you're not overtraining and overextending yourself. If I feel an extra ache or pain coming on, I usually am really conservative with it, and I'll take a day off. I'm not afraid to take a day off or take a shorter day or reduce my speed. But yeah, I've been lucky not to have an overuse injury take me out for more than about 1 week or 2 weeks. Usually my injuries are from falling on the trail and cutting my knee and getting stitches, and then I have to take that's usually only 2 weeks too.
Yeah, I remember that the incident you had was a bit scary for probably more of your parents and your girlfriend when you made that fall on UTMB descent there late in the night and you had to get flown out by chopper. Hope you had travel insurance for that one, mate. That would have been scary.
Oh, actually, so I fell at just before halfway in the race at night, and I cut my knee open on a rock and had to get stitches at the 50-mile aid station at UTMB, 160K race. And I wanted to continue, but the knee was in so much pain and the joint had swollen up that I was worried about doing permanent damage. So I hiked my way up to the next mountain pass at Bertone in the middle of Italy in the middle of the night, and I was up high on the mountain, and I decided I couldn't go downhill anymore because the knee joint hurt too much and it was swollen. So they said, okay, well, the only way to down the mountain is if you go back down or we take you out on a helicopter because there's no roads, there's no cars up there. So if you stop, you're kind of stuck. And so I asked them, I said, how much will a helicopter cost? And it was only like €100. So I said, okay, bring in the helicopter.
Yeah, cool.
So it was actually a pretty good deal for a helicopter flight in the mountains.
Definitely.
Yeah. But even my first ultra I did 4 years before that, I also had fallen at the end of the Chuckanut 50K, and it was the same thing. I tumbled into a sharp rock and I cut my knee open and I had to get stitches. Fortunately, in that race, it was near the end, so I was able to finish with a bloody knee, and then they stitched me up on the finish line. So I've had a history with getting some little cuts from falling during trail races.
Yeah, okay. Now I know you've been over here close by, over there in New Zealand. You competed in the Tarawera Ultra Marathon there. I think you've competed twice and won it twice. Is that correct?
That is, yep. Yeah, and it was both courses were altered. So I've never run the traditional course. The first year we ran a full 100K. I'm trying to think what year it was. 2013, I think, was the year. 2013, 2014. I think I did it. Yeah, it was 2013 and 2014 was the year I did the race. And the second year they changed the course. The night before they shortened the course to about 80K because there was a storm coming in and they were worried about the heavy rain and the flooding. Whereas the first year I did it, it was a dry season and they were worried about bushfire potential making the course dangerous. So we started near Rotorua in the redwood forest. And we ran, that was the start both years, but it was kind of an out and back both years.
Sure, yeah. I did it last year and they've changed now. It's point to point. So we finish at Rotorua and it was a bit of a mud fest. They had heaps of rain that year and there was mud up to the knees. So had to
wow.
So it was more survival. Sort of had to change the tactics on that day. It was a bit of a hard day. Have you ever been invited to Australia for any of the races? We've got some fantastic trail races here. Have you ever got an invite from one of the race directors to get you here? Or
I'd love to do a race in Australia. Yeah, the 100K. I know you have what is it? Is the ones in the Blue Mountains as well, right?
That's right. So that's called the UTA. So you got the 50 and the 100K distance. Yeah, that's right. So that's on in March, April every year. Yeah. No, it's
Yeah,
May,
no, it's
on
on
in
the
May.
list.
Yeah.
It's on the list to come out to Australia. I've thought about doing even like the Gold Coast Marathon before too,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
fast road marathon. But no, I've it's yeah, Australia is very high on my list of the next new place to travel to.
Yeah.
I love
No.
the community, and it just yeah, it sounds really nice. So
No, you'd love it.
no,
I think
I definitely
UTA
want to come out.
for sure. UTA 100, you'd love it. I mean, you'd probably get blown away with the scenery in the bushland, but it's really technical. Lots of upstairs, downstairs, some solid climbs in it. Which would probably really suit your style. So I'm sure they'd love to have you. It's recently been bought by Ironman, the race, but you wouldn't know it by actually doing the race. So maybe there's a few more funds there, and yeah, definitely we'd love to see Sage Canaday out here in Australia, mate. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, it's high on my list. I know you guys have such a great running community, trail running, road running, ultra running, mountain running. So
Yeah,
yeah, it'd be
yeah.
really cool to be able to travel there sometime.
Yeah, the trail running's really taken off globally, hasn't it? The last 10 years, you must have seen that definitely yourself. A lot of people are more keen to run in the trails now than what they are on the roads, which is good.
Yeah, no, it's really taken off, and it's great because it's soft surfaces. You get to see a lot of beautiful areas, and it's helped with the innovation of the products, nutrition products, pack products, the types of trail shoes that you could wear nowadays. And I'd say in the US, there's still a lot more road marathon, half marathon focus, but it's the trail running's also been growing, and the U.S. is also interesting too because a lot of the trail running scene is pretty obsessed with the 100-mile distance.
Yep.
So it's all about going farther, 100K
Mm,
or not 100K, 160K,
mm.
and trying to get into a big hundred like Western States or Hard Rock or Leadville or something like that. Whereas if you look at trail running in other countries, well, where I've been at least in like Europe or with the Golden Trail series, it's more about just running point to point between two cities, two destinations, or running through mountain towns and not really caring exactly what distance it is. So, a lot of the races in the Golden Trail series, they are around 42K, but some of the races like Ring of Steel is like 28K, or Sierra Zinal is like, I don't know, it's like 28, 29K. They don't really care what distance it is. It's like 18.6 miles or something. So it's interesting to see that. And then there's a lot of sub-ultra distances too with the mountain running and trail running in Europe. It's, UTMB is actually longer than 160K. It's almost 170K, I think.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really matter because you're going from Chamonix through the different towns around Mont Blanc and then ending in Chamonix. So it's an interesting perception.
Yeah, the UTMB, it's obviously it's gained a lot of momentum, and they've made it a little bit easy to qualify now. But it's probably I'd like to do it just I can imagine of a night time, as long as it's not blizzardy and rainy and hail, which can happen being European mountain weather. But I've heard people describe being out on those ridges and those mountains of a night time with those just a star lit sky, and seeing the snakes of all the headlamps disappearing up on top of the mountains. I think that would be an incredible experience. It's probably more power hiking and technical than I would like. It's not. I wouldn't say it's a runnable race. Would you agree?
It's not technical. It's not
Okay.
very technical, I'd say, but it is a lot of power hiking because the climbs are just so long and so steep, and you're going for so long all night that even the top guys. That year I fell, I was in the lead pack with the top five guys, and you're always reduced to a power hike. Most of the people use trekking poles.
Mm.
Probably 80%, 90% of the field at UTMB will have trekking poles because you're power hiking so much. But it's not a technical trail. There's definitely some technical parts. Like where I fell was not even very technical. It was kind of embarrassing that I fell there. It was more like a dirt road, but it's, as far as like technical trail running goes, it's actually pretty smooth double track a lot of times, and I think part of that's because it's a famous trek, so a lot of people like to hike the UTMB route or variants on the UTMB route over the summer. People, hikers, trekkers who will spend 6 days, 7 days hiking the route, and so it's a very wide dirt trail. And yeah, it could get muddy, it could get covered in snow, but there's not really too many sharp rocks or roots in most of it. And when you go through the big aid stations, you're going through town, you're actually on streets and roads a lot. So it's, the downhills are very runnable, and you have to be used to the quad pounding for actually running downhill pretty fast if you want to do well. So it's a unique race, and it's a huge challenge, but definitely recommend it as a bucket list race. It's absolutely beautiful. It's brutal. It's a great event.
Yeah, and what, do you think you might go back?
I'd love to go back. Yeah,
Okay,
just to, mainly it's like Comrades. I want to redeem myself because I
sure.
feel like I
Okay.
haven't uh, I haven't done well there yet. So
Yep.
I want
Yep.
to go back. Yeah.
Yep. And you've done Western States. How many times have you done Western States? And
Just once.
okay,
Just
and
once.
from memory, you had GI issues there, nutrition sort of problems. It wasn't a great day there for you. You
Oh
finished
yeah, it was
as
a nightmare.
yeah, exactly. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you sort of had more success with the like the 50 mile, 80k distances than you have since you've stepped up and done the 100 milers. Is there any reason why you feel you haven't really nailed that distance yet? And tell me if I'm wrong with that. But yeah, and leading into that also with your race nutrition, which you had to learn there at Western States, that might have been more heat related than actually getting the nutrition wrong. But is your sort of fuel requirements, and nutrition still, let's say, a work in progress, or do you think you're starting to learn what your body and, well, I guess more importantly, what your gut can sort of tolerate and absorb, or is that something you're still trying to sort out?
Oh, I think it's always a work in progress
Mm,
because it's I feel like it's changed over time, and it changes with weather conditions. I say I
mm,
have it more sorted for a road marathon. In a road
mm,
marathon, I'm pretty confident. I know exactly what I could take and how much I could handle. Whereas with the 100-mile distance, the 160K distance, or even 100K, it's been a lot harder for me because there's just more time where things could go wrong, I think. And so I'd say I'm figuring it out more in the longer ultra distances. And I think with the my I haven't done as well at the longer ones because I haven't really tried as many longer distance races. Whereas I've done a lot of 50Ks, I've done a lot of even 80K 50-mile races. So I'm kind of more confident with the shorter races and the road marathons, whereas the longer ones are more uncharted territory. And it could just be genetic. Like maybe I'll always be my sweet spot's more 50K, 50 miles in the mountains, and maybe I won't run as well at a UTMB or Western States. But when I did go to Western States, I'll agree with you. It was definitely it seemed like it was more of a dehydration issue, and I was also just running way too fast. I didn't pace myself well. So that year, it was 2016. It was an average heat year at Western States, which means it's hot. And I was trying to chase down Jim Walmsley. We were both out the front. Jim was in first, and I was in second through 100K. And we were both under course record pace that day. Um, and that was the year Jim actually got lost. He took a wrong turn.
mm,
And I was in second behind him, kind of by myself. But I started struggling with stomach issues right after Forest Hill, which is the 100K mark in the race. But I was still under course record pace, but I probably shouldn't have gone out that fast. So I think I was working too hard. I got really dehydrated, and then my stomach turned on me, and I was pretty sick the last 50K of the race. I was walking a lot, so kind of a lesson learned. But it's hard with the weather and how things change over 100 miles, and what you think you might be able to handle pace wise based on your training and fitness versus what you actually could handle. And there's a
mm.
lot of mental games with that, and I think you just have to learn. But yeah, I'd love to go back and redeem myself at those longer ultra races.
So we've got UTMB, you got to go back, redeem. You got Comrades, got to go back. Western States, you got to go back. You're a busy man.
Yep, yeah. Yeah, yeah. But I love the 42K mountain race distance, as I feel like as I get older, it's still you still could do the longer ultras pretty well. Even for someone like me who's been running year round for over 20 years, I have a big endurance base, and I'll start. I don't care about my 5K PR or my 10K PR as much, or even my marathon PR, which will get harder to hit because I focused on it for so much when I was in my 20s. But I feel like with the longer distances, you could still be in your mid to late 30s or 40s even, and still be running at a world class level. There's guys that win Western States or win UTMB that are even 40 years old sometimes. So I think there's still hope in the longer distances. Maybe you'll gain more wisdom and knowledge as you get older and more experience, and that'll pay into the longer distance success, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on to something else very recent, the US have had a grey all day in Argentina, if you know what I mean, at the Mountain Running Championships, sort of alluding to the fact that Joe Gray won the title there, and then Grace and Murphy taking out the top spot there. So yeah, that's pretty good performance for the US team down there in Argentina. I know
Great
you've raced
performance.
against
Yeah.
Joe a few times.
Oh yeah, Joe. We were on a U.S. mountain running team. In 2012, I ran that event, and we were teammates. And then also at Pikes Peak, the Pikes Peak Ascent in 2014, we ran together. And then I've seen Joe throughout the years. Also, a Hoka sponsored athlete now.
Sure, yeah, yeah. What's his? Do you know what his PB is for a road marathon? He must have a bit of speed in his legs as well.
Yeah, I don't think he has a trials qualifier in this cycle. I think he ran 218 before, though, maybe in 2014. I think he's run 218 in the marathon. His half marathon PB is probably even better. I think he's run maybe 102, 103 in the half. And then I know his 10K PB he set recently. He ran a 28, I think it was under 28:20 on the
Okay.
track for a 10,000 meters. But excellent mountain runner, and he does the any service, any distance. Although he won't venture over 42K very much. I know he's done a couple 50K trails, but his sweet spot's been more of the mountain races that are 42K or less.
Yeah, okay, yep. And he's got a bit of height. He looks fairly tall.
Yeah, he's definitely over 6 feet tall. What is that, 2 meters? He's a couple inches taller than me for sure.
Yeah,
He's way taller than like a Killian Jornet or someone like that.
yeah, for sure. Now you sort of get looked after, which is fantastic by some of the brand sponsors such as Hoka One One that they've been with for a while. And an interesting one there. Now, your dog's named Pacer. Now, you've also got a bit of a sponsorship there of the local brewery, Avery Brewery, and they've got an IPA called Pacer. Now, did you actually name your dog after a beer?
Oh no, the dog was named before the beer. I
Oh,
think
there
some
you go.
people think that the beer is named after the dog, and it's actually not my dog. It's my girlfriend's sister's dog who
Oh,
lived
okay.
with us
All right.
over the years, but we're still close, and we see Pacer quite a bit. But yeah, Avery Brewing is a local Boulder craft brewery. They make a lot of different beers. The Pacer IPA is more of a lighter IPA. It's only 4.5% alcohol and lower carbohydrate, but it's also supposed to still have that same hop flavor of a traditional IPA. But they make 5 different IPAs, so it's a good refreshing beer, especially on like a hotter day.
Sure.
They also make great lagers and some really strong, heavy stouts as well. But Pacer's a good running dog, and the beer's a good beer for people after a race or a hard effort. It's refreshing.
Yeah, no, definitely. Now you're a plant-based food athlete, a vegan athlete. Now, Do you find that diet really? I mean, I know you were sort of vegetarian before you were vegan, but I know a lot of people have gone to plant-based and they actually find their body just recovers a hell of a lot better from the training. Um, so it's hard for you to say compare one to another, but do you find that a lot more athletes are heading over to the plant-based diet just due to not only the energy levels, but the way they're actually pulling up and recovering from training?
It's hard to say. I think the shift has been also from eating less processed foods
Mm.
to just trying to eat more whole foods. So I still have a sweet tooth for cakes and desserts. I still eat my pizzas and things like that. Ice cream, even they have vegan ice cream, which obviously isn't as good for you, being full of refined sugar. It's more processed versus eating something like fruit or eating a lot of salads and vegetables. And I think the benefit with that is you get a lot of antioxidants, which help with your muscle repair and damage and oxidative stress on your body. So it's more about staying hydrated, getting in those vitamins and nutrients, but then also making sure you get a good blend of amino acids, the building blocks of protein, as well as staying on top of your vitamin levels. But I think it's been a general shift, at least in a lot of the countries or the cities in Europe that I've been in, as well as in the U.S. Major cities, where you see more options in the restaurants, and it's labeled on the menu. I could go out and I say, oh, I could find a veggie burger now, and it's not this weird thing where people look at you like you're crazy that you
Mm.
want a veggie burger. So I think in even outside of athletes, it's just a general trend where there's more plant-based options for everyone. But I definitely know quite a few athletes that I've found out over the years that are vegetarian, or there's great athletes that eat all sorts of different diets, for sure. But I think it's been growing a bit over especially the last five years.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, Now, you wear Hokas because they're your main sponsor. There's a lot of talk about the Nike Vaporfly, mate. Are you always like, are you curious or keen to sort of, I don't know, put on a mask and go out at midnight where you don't get recognised to actually see what the fuss is all about?
No, I wouldn't do that, but
No,
I think it's a very expensive shoe.
it is.
So the thing that bothers me, I guess, about it is partly the price point being so high
Mm,
for anybody, well, any non-sponsored athlete, and then the idea of with road marathon runners, we see it's definitely more of an issue. I think I'm kind of lucky that because I'm sponsored to be a trail running athlete, that it wouldn't ever work on the trails. Even carbon fiber plate's not going to help you as much. And Hoka does have a couple carbon fiber shoes, like the Carbon Rocket and the Carbon X. But on the trails, it's not something that you would want to wear generally, because trails are too uneven, they're too technical, and you actually have to use more of your foot and engage more. So with the roads, it's hard to say. I don't know the exact specifications of the design, or I know they've done some biomechanics studies here in Boulder. They have a big lab here at the university, and they've done some efficiency studies with that shoe. I think it was part of how they labeled it as the 4%, and now there's the what is I don't even know what it's called, the next percent or the 5% or
yep, next percent. Yep.
Vaporfly. Yeah.
So,
But yeah, I
so
could definitely see how a curved carbon fiber blade might start getting into the realm of what is propulsive, because they've banned shoes with springs in the past, and I think the question from like a physics standpoint or a design standpoint is how much is this shoe acting like a spring, even though it's a curved carbon fiber plate, and what is the role of the carbon fiber plate versus Nike's midsole technology with the type of foam they're using that they sandwich the plate in. But I don't know. I don't know the details. I'm
mm,
sure it's like a shoe war between the brands.
yeah, well, that's right. I mean, other people looking into it and the other shoe manufacturers or other athletes who who are unable to wear it have sort of said, they're getting an unfair advantage. But yeah, I believe a lot of the feeling or the response that people are actually getting is probably more the foam than the actual carbon plate. But that's my thought on it. I know, like you mentioned, Hoka have brought in a carbon plate shoe, and a lot of other manufacturers are trying to do that. I believe there's a few patents that Nike have put down to sort of cover their tracks a little bit there. But yeah, I mean, obviously everyone loves the feeling of it. So I was just curious if you just, out of curiosity, just want to actually see how it actually felt underfoot. That's all. Yeah.
No, that would violate my contract.
Yeah,
I've
that's
been
right.
with
That's right.
Hoka for this is my 6th year as a Hoka One One athlete, and I don't worry about it as much because I'm not sponsored to be a road marathon runner or a track runner.
Yep.
And Hoka does make track spikes too, actually, but I think in trail running the field is level more, and yeah, the price point of the shoe is a little concerning as well. Just because it becomes an issue.
Yep.
But yeah, it's hard to say.
Sure. And obviously you're pretty outspoken. Sort of. I'm not sure what the actual tagline they call it, but basically race clean. Trying to promote. Trying to put a stance on people who are cheating in the sport, taking performance-enhancing drugs or whatever it might actually be. Do you feel? I mean, obviously we need to be doing more, and some of it has crept into trail racing. Do you think? Have you got any suggestions or any thoughts, or what we could be doing better as far as out of competition testing, or do you think? I mean, do you basically think we need to improve on the current standard is?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I use the hashtag clean sport, but yeah, it's something I'm obviously biased in because I compete as a professional and compete for prize money and sponsorship slots. And like I said, when I was talking about Comrades 2015, I said, well, I was 15th across the line, but there were 2 guys that tested positive on the day for PEDs, performance enhancing drugs. So I really say I got 13th at Comrades, fair and square more. But you see it in track running and road running where there's a lot more prize money on the line. But in trail running, I think it's also very prevalent. There's been a story of a guy that was taking EPO, who got top 10. I think he was actually 6th at UTMB one of those years, and they did have some sort of drug testing at the finish of UTMB. So that was good to see. More race day drug testing, but I haven't been tested that much in my career, honestly, real drug testing, and it's only really been at Pikes Peak when I won the mountain running championships at the Pikes Peak Ascent in 2014. But with the amount of prize money and perks on the line, I'd say there definitely needs to be more testing in mountain ultra trail running because it's not 100% clean. And the benefits, I think, are pretty big. Like, I've been fortunate enough to get sponsorship, career-changing sponsorship. I've gotten tens of thousands of dollars in travel benefits over the years, gotten to live my dream and travel around the world. You get free gear and shoes and clothing. And I think part of it's tied up in ego, too, with getting more social media followers, more likes on Instagram. Some people might be tempted to take a little extra, take some EPO or something like that. That's not as expensive, I think, as most people think. And, if it pays off for tens of thousands of dollars in benefits, it could be something that I'd imagine some top-ranked mountain ultra trail runners are actually doing because you don't have to worry about getting caught very much unless you go to a certain race where the test is going to happen. But then you could just taper off 2 or 3 weeks before the race and probably get around it. So you don't even need a sophisticated Lance Armstrong type of program. You really just, there needs to be more testing. And I think the question is where the money comes from. I'd be willing to pay my own licensing fee as a professional, maybe, 400, 500 USD a year. If you get the top 50 ranked trail runners in the world all contributing into this fund, there would be at least some money for some random tests maybe throughout the year carried out by a third party under World Anti-Doping Agency rules and restrictions. Because if you're facing a risk of getting banned from the sport, and there's a peer pressure type of element to it, I think that's probably going to be the most effective thing, is out of season, out of race competition testing for actual drugs, and then the peer pressure to compete clean, to compete to the best of your ability, not take things like EPO, especially the heavy hitters is what I'm worried about. Like EPO would be a big one.
Sure. So do you sort of have to mentally put that sort of behind you when you turn up to a race, prepare the best, and not think about this person could be doing that. I've heard this person's doing this, so it's just a matter of turning up, doing your best race, and just hopefully that they do get caught if they are taking something. I mean, it must be hard to sometimes, because like you said, like you're a professional runner, you sort of rely on that income, and you work your butt off out there to perform, and to sort of sometimes think, that someone who finishes in front of you is taking a piece of that pie. It must be sort of hard to not let that distract, your mindset.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely hard, and yeah, it's definitely something I'm pretty passionate about and think about, and I know other sponsored runners do too. So yeah, it's a tough situation. I think trail running, though, in general is more clean than even the road marathon running, and even sports like cycling. I think it would be much more difficult. So I'm thankful for that, and yeah, it's there is less money in professional mountain ultra trail running than those other sports or big sports, but at the same time, I think it's a matter of just principle, honesty, integrity, competing to the best of your ability. Like if you were running a trail race and you were going off course and cutting the race distance, like that would be the same sort of feeling that I would get from someone taking drugs. It's like literally taking a shortcut during a race, cutting off the distance and cutting, not following the rules. So I kind of feel like that, but yeah, just showing people that you could do naturally through hard work, you could improve yourself and still compete is important. Example for the younger runners, I think, too. And a health thing too. A lot of those PEDs aren't good after you get an old age. I don't think they'll be good for you either. So there's that too.
For sure. Look, mate, I've taken a lot of your time here on a Friday night. It is over there, Boulder on a Friday night. You're probably taking Sandy out on a hot date, I imagine.
Oh, we did that. We did that yesterday night. But yeah.
Oh, okay.
Definitely. Yeah. Getting ready for dinner. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You and Sandy have been an item for a while, mate. Those church bells that are ringing in the distance must be getting a little bit louder these days.
Yeah, definitely. Going on 6-7 years. So she also co-founded our coaching business, sagerunning.com, where we sell training plans. She developed all the plans for me with me, any service, any distance, and does coaching there. So it's been a big part of our lives.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Oh, well, mate, thank you so much for your time tonight, being a guest on the Runner Guy podcast. Mate, all the best with your training for that OTQ over there in Houston, and all the other future races. Well, I might just ask, after the OTQ, what's the plan for the rest of 2020?
Oh, I haven't decided anything concrete yet. I'll probably take a little break after the road marathons. I mean, hopefully, if I qualify, I'll be doing the Olympic trials in February. But then after that, I'll definitely need to take some downtime. Maybe try to get into some skiing or something even, and then focus on. There's a good chance I'll do the Golden Trail Series again and focus on Pikes Peak because I've really enjoyed that over the years. So. Like to do some more mountain racing still.
Sure. Yep. All right, mate. If I can put some of your social links and sponsors in the show details below, just so the listeners could check it out and follow along Sage Canaday, because you're clearly struggling to get the numbers up there with your following. You know what I mean? Like you're only up about 50, 100,000. So we get a few more for you.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Awesome, mate.
On YouTube at VO2 Max Productions, but if you just search my name, you could find some videos on the YouTube, and then on Instagram and Twitter at Sage Canaday. It's just my full name. And then, like I mentioned before, running business plug. My partner Sandy Nightpaver and I, we co-founded SageRunning.com, where we sell training plans and do coaching, and we have free resources on there. Also on social media at Sage Running. And then, title sponsor, Hoka One One. I've been with them for 6 years now as a mountain ultra trail athlete, and been really happy with it. So, thanks.
And you even got a gel named after you.
Oh yeah, the Spring Energy. My Spring Energy. The company's called Spring Energy, but their tag is My Spring Energy on one of their handles. I forget which one now. The Canterbury, strawberry flavored, naturally produced energy gel. Yeah. It's got a rice base, but it also has like strawberries ground up and bananas in it. So it's a kind of a fruity gel, but natural energy, vegan. So I've been fortunate to have that, and Avery Brewing Company, Boulder, Colorado.
For sure.
Probably hard to find in Australia but
that's a good.
They're making their way around. Yeah.
I like all those hyperlinks in the notes below, mate. But look, thanks heaps, Sage. Look, I personally sort of looking forward to seeing how the remaining chapters of the story of the Sage story unfolds, mate.
Thank you.
It's been a good read so far, mate, and thanks so, mate. And try to get to bed early a little bit tonight, mate. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
you get to sleep in. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thanks so much, Sage.
Thank you. Yeah. Keep up the great work. Thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks, Sage.
All right. Bye.
Bye, mate. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for tuning into the Running Guy podcast again. Hit the follow button if you haven't already. Follow the links in the show description below. Over to join the conversation on my social media handles. Become a member of the Running Guy Podcast Strava Club, as well as the link over to the Running Guy Coaching website. Train hard, recover harder. See ya.